Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajacharya Astasarasya Srimad His Divine Grace of Her Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Thai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Summal devotees. All glories to the Summal devotees. All glories to the Summal devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padasthaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharini Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatare Shatarini. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 9, text number 19. Brahma's prayers for creative energy. Tiryan Manusha Vibhudadishu Jiva Jonishu Atmaischayatma Krita Setu Paripshaya Yaha Reme Nirasta Vishayo Api Avarudha Dehas Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Purushottamaya. Tirjan Manusha Vibhudadishu Jiva Jonishu. Tirjan Manusha Vibhudadishu Jiva Jonishu. Atmaischayatma Krita Setu Paripsayaya. Atmaischayatma Krita Setu Paripsayaya. Reme Nirasta Vishayo Pivarudha Dehas. Reme Nirasta Vishayo Pyavarudha Dehas. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Purushottamaya. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Purushottamaya. Tiryan Manusha Vibhudadishu Jiva Jonishu. Atmaischayatma Krita Setu Paripsayaya. Reme Nirasta Vishayo Pyavarudha Dehas. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Purushottamaya. Tiryan manusha udarishu jiva jonishu Atmitschayatma kritasetu paripsayaya Rime nirasta vishayapya viruddha dehas Tasmai namo bhagavate purushottamaya Tasmai namo bhagavate purushottamaya Adatmirasha vibhudyasha jiva janishu Rime nirasta vishayopya varuddha dehas Tasmai namo bhagavate purushottamaya. Ladies, tiryan manusha vibhudadishu jiva jonishu Atmachayatma kritasetu paripchayaya Rime nirasta vishayapya varuddha dehas Tasmai namo bhagavate purushottamaya Tiryan manusha bhubadadishu jiva jonishu Atmaichayatma kritasetu paripsayaya Rime nirasta vishayopya varuddha dehas Tasmai namo bhagavate purushottamaya Tiryak. Animals lower than human beings. Manusha, human beings, etc. Vibhuddha adishu, amongst the demigods. Jiva jonishu, in different species of life. Atma, self. It's jaya, by the will. Atma krita, self-created. Setu, obligations. Paripsaya, desiring to preserve. Ya, who? Reme, performing transcendental pastimes. Nirasta, not being affected. Vishaya, material contamination. Api, certainly. Aviruddha, manifested. Deha, transcendental body. Tasmai, unto him. Namaha, my obeisances. Bhagavate, unto the personality of Godhead. Purushottamaya, the primeval Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, by your own will you appear in the various species of living entities, among animals lower than human beings, as well as among the demigods, to perform your transcendental pastimes. You are not affected by material contamination. You come just to fulfill the obligations of your own principles of religion. And therefore, O Supreme Personality, I offer my obeisances unto you by manifesting such different forms. Purport. The Lord's incarnations are different species in different species of life, are all transcendental. He appears as a human being in his incarnations of Krishna, Rama, etc. But he is not a human being. Anyone who mistakes him for an ordinary human being is certainly not very intelligent, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajanati mamudha manushintanam ashrita. The same principle is applicable when he appears as a hog or fish incarnations. These are transcendental forms of the Lord and are manifested under certain necessities of his own pleasure and pastimes. Such manifestations of the transcendental forms of the Lord are accepted by him mostly to enliven his devotees. All his incarnations are manifested whenever there is a need to deliver his devotees and maintain his own principles. Om Jnani Timidandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sigurave Namah. Gam Guru Divachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yaripadamande Sigurim Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So I have to confess that I was actually expecting to read the next verse over. I was expecting to read text number 20, so if there's no objection, I'd like to merge the two verses together and make it a more pleasing class. Text number 20. My Lord, you accept the pleasure of sleeping in the water of devastation, where there are violent waves, and you enjoy pleasure on the bed of snakes. Showing the happiness of your sleep is to intelligent persons. At that time, all the universal planets are stationed within your abdomen. Purport. Persons who cannot think of anything beyond the limit of their own power are like frogs in a well who cannot imagine the length and breadth of the great Pacific Ocean. Such people take it as legendary when they hear that the Supreme Lord is lying on his bed within the great ocean of the universe. They are surprised that one can lie down within water and sleep very happily. But a little intelligence can mitigate this foolish astonishment. There are many living entities within the bed of the ocean who also enjoy the material bodily activities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. If such insignificant living entities can enjoy life within the water, why can't the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, sleep on the cool body of a serpent and enjoy in the turmoil of violent ocean waves? The distinction of the Lord is that his activities are all transcendental, and he is able to do anything and everything without being deterred by limitations of time and space. He can enjoy his transcendental happiness regardless of material considerations. So in these two verses, Srila Prabhupada is so very nicely pointing out that those who are of less intelligence cannot think beyond their own little political or social climate. And they basically have no thoughts beyond that. They're so consumed by their own limitations that they can't imagine how the Lord can assume all of these transcendental forms and engage in activities which are unaffected by the material energy. Within our own experience, we know that whenever we do something, engage in some activity, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, it's covered by some fault. That without a doubt, without any argument, there's some fault. There's some shortcoming. Oh, we weren't able to achieve such and such thing. Whether it be material sense gratification or mental equanimity, always there's some shortfall there. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, asyatam apatistam te jagarahur nishvaram. Such persons, because they don't think that that this world is real, that it has any foundation, that it's been produced by some mundane activity. Etam drishtam avastabhya nastatno alpabhulaya. They are lost within themselves, as Prabhupada is pointing out here in this purport. And it's hard for them to think beyond their own limitations. And because of that, whatever they do is unbeneficial, and it's horrible. It has some negative effect. Therefore, and as a result of that, they want to project that upon those who are engaged in spiritual work. What to speak of the Supreme Lord when He manifests a beautiful form such as Krishna, Rama, etc., as Prabhupada points out here. They're foolish. Avajananti mamudha. They have no idea how the Lord can manifest such beautiful forms and activities. And they, as Prabhupada points out here, they're compared to frogs in a well who cannot imagine the length and breadth of the great Pacific Ocean. Just as a frog is in a teeny little well and it thinks that, well, this is the all in all. So also the conditioned souls are within their tiny little well, their little circle of experience, and it's hard for them to think beyond that. Unfortunately, we're living, especially now, in such a climate where people are really constricted by their political, by their social understandings, their limitations. And to think beyond that, as Prabhupada points out here, they take it as legendary. It's an imagination. It's like sometimes, or it may be some Marvel comic hero, right? That the absolute truth is like some Marvel comic hero, and it's just it's a fantasy, and it's not real. But as Srila Prabhupada points out here, the Lord is described as Urukrama, right? That one whose activities are glorious. They're marvelous. They're beyond mundane limitations, beyond our senses. And to accept that the Lord can assume these wonderful forms, or that He can even sit on a beautiful bed, a serpent bed in the ocean, is quite fantastic. it's beyond imagination. Therefore, they consider it, it's just some, it's nice flowery language. They're nice fairy tales. And when we hear about the activities of the Lord throughout the Vedic literatures, they're simply meant as allegories. They don't really mean much. You just have to look into it and speculate about the reality of it. But with just a little bit of intelligence, as Prabhupada points out here, with a little bit of intelligence, one can mitigate this foolish astonishment. Because even in the material world, as Prabhupada points out here, there are many living entities within the bed of the ocean who also enjoy the same bodily material activities that we all are enjoying. Just as we're engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, also in the ocean, these things are going on. So it's not beyond our imagination. We can actually perceive that. It can actually be seen how even in the material world there are certain living entities who within the ocean are engaged in sleeping. Just like recently we went and did some trip to Florida, and we were doing some diving, and we went by a pier, and it was maybe 15 feet down, and there were two beautiful, they were nurse sharks. Very beautiful. It's fascinating how above the water, or at the top where the waves are, it can be very rough, right? And very turbulent. Just as here in this example, Prabhupada points out how the Lord is lying on his bed within the great ocean of the universe. They're surprised that he can sleep very happily, because the ocean, we understand, is very turbulent and the waves can toss one back and forth. But once you get into the water and you dive down, it's a whole different experience. The atmosphere is quite serene. The living entities are very nicely and casually gliding back and forth. It's a whole different sphere. And they're enjoying that atmosphere. They can huddle with each other. Two or three were packed together in a crevice, and you could see that they were resting. So they're also sleeping underwater, just like we're sleeping here. They're also enjoying themselves in the water. And they're also eating, as Prabhupada points out here. Just like the whale sharks. The whale sharks are 40 feet long, and they're filter eaters. They suck in all kinds of water through their mouths, which are huge and which could swallow a human. They're 40,000 pounds in weight and some 40 or so feet long. And you can swim alongside them, and they're quite peaceful. They're not disturbed but they're engaged in these very same activities. They're quite peaceful. You just have to watch out for the tail fin, because if you get hit by it, it's a problem. But they're eating, they're sleeping. Eating, we went and saw some lemon sharks. The lemon sharks are some 10 foot long, and they weigh about 700 pounds. And they have a biting strength of some 1,300 pounds. So they can take a human being, or they can take the bait box. We had a bait box with us, and they could come and crush it easily. They were so powerful with their bite. Just, these milk crates that we have here, they just tore it up. And, but still, they're quite peaceful in their own little world. They can float by you and or bump into you. I was watching a couple others that were busy floating around, and one came up behind me and bumped me. And it was a whole different atmosphere, a whole different world. But they're eating, sleeping, they're defending. When you go down further at the reef floor, you'll see these colored patches of different assorted colored patches that are along the floor reef. And when you get closer to it, lo and behold, what it is a nest of eggs of different fish. So they're happily living in their own little world, just as, again, in the material world or out here, we have experienced people are lost within themselves. So those fish, they're also lost within themselves. And when you get close to it, the teeny little fish comes up to you, trying to defend, as Prabhupada points out here. They're eating, sleeping, defending, mating. So if something like that can happen within our own experience, what to speak of what the Supreme Personality of Godhead can do? He can also eat, just as Jagannath eats so much every single day in Puri. So many offerings are given to him around the world. So the Supreme Lord he's eating very nicely. He's also sleeping, as Prabhupada points out here in this verse, that he can also sleep within that ocean, although it's very turbulent. And he can also defend, right? When the Lord can take in his various incarnations, he can appear as Lord Ram or Nrsingadev or Varaha, the hog, fly in the sky, and engage in wonderful transcendental pastimes. So if it can be seen within our own experience, why can't he who is unlimited? And he's also producing. It's like the seahorse, the male seahorse, it blows out from its abdomen. It can blow out 2,000 small babies at one time. The male carries the babies within its abdomen, and it blows it out. So also, the Lord, he's lying on the causal ocean, and he produces this beautiful lotus flower, which Lord Brahma appears from, and from that, the whole creation takes place. So if it can happen in the material world, why can't it happen with the absolute truth? To say that it can't, there's lack of understanding. There's no intelligence there. How is it that the unlimited can be limited? Again, if we can see these things within our own practical day-to-day experience, certainly those things can happen in the transcendental world or from the absolute truth, who is the source of everything. Prabhupada points out here that such insignificant living entities can enjoy life within the water, why can't the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, sleep on the cool body of a serpent and enjoy the turmoil of violent ocean waves? Which brings to mind that beautiful pastime of one rishi who was a descendant of Bhrigu, who after performing his necessary purificatory ceremonies, taking Brahminical initiation, he engaged in his devotional service to the Lord and began his meditation. He meditated for, it was some 6 lifetimes of Manu. 6 lifetimes of Manu. And in the 7th Manu, Indra felt threatened. So what did he do? Indra, sometimes he's like that. He sent Cupid and with Cupid's associates. They went to see this rishi and they wanted to break his meditation. Because sometimes Indra feels threatened that, oh, someone's getting a little too powerful here. It could threaten my position. So Cupid and his associates went and they tried to break the rishi's meditation, but they failed. And of course, Indra and Cupid, they were all quite amazed. How was this? The Lord at this time in Badarik Ashram came down in the form of Narayan. Narayan, of course, is the Lord, and Nara is the personification of the devotee. So the rishis, Narayan, came and saw this devotee because he was engaged in meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they were so pleased by his austerities and by his devotion that they offered him a benediction, whatever you like. When the Supreme Lord appears before the devotee, certainly it's glorious, but the devotee is not interested in benedictions. Just like as Prahlad, right? Prahlad, when he was asked, Bhavatastu Vanevaram, he said, I don't want anything. I just want that the material desires within the core of my heart be cleansed. So also this rishi answered that I don't want anything. Just the fact that you appeared in person in front of me is enough. But I would also be interested in seeing your material energy, the workings of your material energy and how it's covering the whole universe by its potency. So Narayan answered, so be it. And they went back to Badarik Ashram. So the rishi, he again engaged in his meditation, his devotional service. And then one evening as he was engaged in his service, a great wind blew in. All of a sudden, a gigantic, forceful wind blew into his ashram. And it became stronger and stronger and stronger. And then all of a sudden, torrents of rain began to fall. And the rains got heavier and heavier. The winds got heavier and heavier. There was thunder, lightning, very terrible. Pretty soon, the whole of the earth was inundated by the oceans of the earth. The whole surface of the earth was flooded. But still, the rains were increasing more and more and more. And the roaring of the waves, which were just like hurricanes, is described. And then all of a sudden, there were all sorts of dangerous reptiles, fishes, timangillas, matarenas. Just like sometimes people are amazed by a whale and how big it is. There's even cases, stories of how people have been swallowed by a blue whale and then spit out. So you can imagine how big they are. But timangillas, when they come, they're so big that they eat those whales. You can imagine how terrifying such an experience is. So they're attacking him. There's all sorts of sounds and ferocious winds, and the waters are thrashing. He's being tossed around, hungry, thirsty, terrified by all of the sounds and ferocious creatures. And then finally, at some point, he sees off in a distance a teeny little island. And keep in mind that he's being thrashed around like this for millions of years, not for just a short few hours, just as sometimes you may go out into the ocean. And if you don't have any experience, the waves can get quite challenging. And all of a sudden you may swallow a little bit of salt water and you start choking. And you start thrashing around. That's actually when the sharks come. If you're nice and calm and controlled, and you don't splash around, they can just brisk by you, just casually float by. But as soon as the thrashing takes place, then you're asking for some problem. So this rishi was being thrashed around in these waters for millions of years. Not just for a short period of time, week or two, or a few hours or a few minutes. And then finally he sees off in the distance a small little island where there's a banyan tree. And on one of the branches of the banyan tree, there's a leaf. And on that leaf, there's a teeny little baby who is a bluish, darkish blue in color. And it's described that his face shone with the wealth of beauty, with his beautiful lotus eyes and his reddish lips, his beautiful ears and his nicely shaped nose and beautiful eyebrows. Just sitting there casually and comfortably enjoying within himself with a lovely smile on his face. And what did he do? This small child, he took his foot and up to his mouth and began to suck his toe. Just like a little baby, sometimes you see how they like to sit in the baby crib and they play with their little toes or some little item. And they just casually and innocently play. So this small child sitting on this leaf in this devastating storm is sitting there. And this rishi, when he saw this, he was totally captivated. Who is this? And he was immediately attracted. And he approached this small boy. But in the next moment, the boy, he inhaled. And this rishi and everything around him, within the whole universe, was sucked within his body. and he could see himself and the whole of the universe as it was before this water, before this devastating water had come. He saw all the different mountains, he saw the different demigods, the planets. He even saw his own ashram. And he was totally curious, bewildered by all of this. And then he again saw this banyan tree with this boy, and he became again so infatuated, so attracted, that he wanted to go and embrace this small child, who again had this beautiful smile. But then again, as he approached, the boy exhaled, and everything came out again, and there he was, being thrashed around in the ocean again, and the island and the boy there sitting on the banyan leaf. And then the next moment, everything was back to it as it had been before the ocean and before this devastating rain had come. Again, everything was back to its original state. And the point of this is that if something like that can happen, if ordinary things like creatures living in the ocean and creatures doing so many things within the universe, going through their regular activities, if they can do those things, why cannot the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the creator of everything, who is the origin of everything, why can't he engage in such transcendental activities? The Rishi, Markandeya, again, he went back to his yogic practices, and Lord Shiva came down with his wife, Parvati, and on her recommendation, he offered benediction to this Rishi, that because of your great devotion, well, actually when they appeared, the first thing is Markandeya began to offer very nice prayers, and Lord Shiva, being satisfied, offered him so many benedictions. But again, Markandeya didn't want anything. All he wanted was unflinching devotion to the Personality of Godhead, to the devotees of the Lord, and to him, Lord Shiva. And being pleased by all of this, Lord Shiva gave him the benediction of a long life, so that he would not grow old or die until the time of dissolution, and that he would become a great preacher of the Puranas, a great teacher of the Puranas. Therefore, we have the Markandeya Purana. And finally, he makes this statement that whoever hears this and hears and chants this description of the life of Markandeya Rishi, he's guaranteed of liberation from the material world. So these are not, of course, it's because it's in connection with the Personality of Godhead that it becomes valuable. So again, if the Personality of Godhead, when he comes in his different forms, these forms are not, they're beyond our mental speculation. They're not just some imaginary tale. But when he comes in these different forms, whether he is sleeping on the causal ocean or whether he's flying in the sky as Lord Nrsingadev or Varaha, these are all transcendental, and with a little bit of intelligence, hearing from the proper sources, one can understand that. we'll end there. Are there any questions or comments? Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes. About the fire extinguishers? Is that what you said? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. About the fire extinguishers? Yeah. Are there any, we can do this tomorrow morning, but I guess there's a question about the location and use of the fire extinguishers. Just as a precautionary thing, it would be good for all of us to know how to operate a fire extinguisher.